Oh, hello, everybody. It's Chastity White Rose here. And this message is actually a message. This video is meant to be for all the people who follow me on Facebook or otherwise who knew me from churches that I attended in the past. Because I've been in many churches in my life. You know, I was raised in Christianity. I believed in God. I believed the Bible. I believed that Jesus died on the cross, rose from the dead. I believed all that stuff, and I was raised that way. But then several things happened in my life that caused me to no longer believe in Christianity anymore. And here's the thing. I was recently inspired to speak about this issue because of a few things that happened. Okay. Throughout the years, many people have tried to bring me back to Christianity. People have tried to bring me back to Christianity. People have tried to save my soul. And it's really strange because I really want to just give an honest answer to people who ask the question of what happened to me. Because, people in churches, they knew me and they knew quite a bit about me. And I'm going to go over a little bit of the history of the past three churches that I was in since I was 9 years old, basically. Well, technically, it was 12 years old as far back as my memory goes, actually, as far as the last three churches. And I want to explain to the people of the First Church of the Nazarene what happened to me. I want to explain to people at Lakeland Community Church what happened to me. And I want to explain to the people at Life Christian Center what happened to me. These three churches, many things happened over the years. And, okay, there are a few things. See, I have a friend who gives me rides to and from my mom's place. And, he talks a lot about God and Christianity and stuff, and he recommended to me the book, The Case for Christ. And I haven't read the book, although I did ask my mom to find the audiobook from the library so we can just listen to the whole thing for free. But I also bought the movie of The Case for Christ with Lee Strobel. He tries to investigate Christianity and whether the resurrection happened. So, I mean, that's a thing that's interesting. I haven't finished that movie yet. I have only like 20 minutes left of it, but I find it so boring that I have to stop and do something else that I want to do instead. But, various things have happened that inspired me, and I realized I had to make this video. You see, recently, I've had a lot of talks with my mom about religion and stuff, and some of it is inspired because of my unicorn book. And if you happen to see a little picture up there on the corner of the screen, that's actually the cover image of my book called Chandler's Honesty. It's a book I wrote. In fact, it's my book that I wrote, and it mentions a lot of things I've gone through. I feel like this book explains a lot of what I was feeling. There were many things I was thinking and feeling as my religious beliefs just slipped away one by one, So this book explains more about me than any book there is because I wrote it, And, my mom was proofreading my book. She had to read the whole thing, find every typo, every grammar, every mistake. So, but, doing this book has actually led to some interesting talks with my mom. And my mom said something to me that kind of hurt me. She didn't mean anything by it, but she said that you never were a Christian. And I think, I never was a Christian? Well, then what was I? If I wasn't a Christian, then what was I? I wasn't an atheist. I believed in God. I wasn't agnostic because I absolutely believed in God because it was the only thing that I had ever heard all my life. But that's just it. It was the only thing. Since the time I was a little child, I was in churches. Back further my memory goes, I heard about God, Jesus, the Bible. It was all I heard. So of course I believed it. I believed that the Bible was the word of God and that it was all true because that's what churches said. But then I read the Bible, of course. I read almost the whole Bible, although I kind of gave up on the later books of the Old Testament. But anyway, after reading the Bible, the more I read, the less I believed these stories. Things didn't make sense. God didn't make sense. The stories seemed to contradict, and I couldn't figure out whether God was supposed to be nice or mean. There's all this. There's some good stuff. Like thou shalt not kill. The Ten Commandments. But there's other parts of the Bible where God orders people to kill people, such as homosexuals or people who cross-dress, for example. Or kill people of a certain other nation or other religious beliefs. So there's stuff in the Old Testament where God is ordering people to kill other humans or to kill animals as part of ritual sacrifices. So there were more and more contradictions. So the more I read of the Bible, the less I believed it. But even though this continued on and on, I was a pretty big part of churches. From the time I was 12 years old to the time I was 20 years old and I joined the Navy, I was part of the First Church of the Nazarene. Some people remember me from those days. Because I was I was sort of shy. I didn't talk with too much with people. I was kind of crazy, as I still am, of course. I had like this one friend my age. And he and I used to talk about video games, and we had fun about talking about video games, cartoons, so we talk a lot. He was cool, but his parents, which happened to be the pastor and his wife, would criticize him for playing video games. And people were acting like playing video games was satanic and it was sinful and all that. And yet, he didn't take that very well, and neither did I take that very well because, hey, I love video games, I like video games, and if you go to hell or that God doesn't approve of you because you play video games, which is kind of what they said a few times, basically, then it's like, wow, that's a pretty bad deal, And one time, this friend, he told me something I'll never forget. He told me that he wanted to go to hell because that's where his friends were going. And I understood it then. His people that were his closest friends were people who perhaps they were different. Perhaps they weren't Christians. Maybe they didn't believe, or maybe they did something that Christians taught was an unforgivable sin. And so he got the impression that all of his friends that he knew, the friends that he liked, they were all going to hell. And so he wanted to go to hell to be with his friends. And I remember that, man. I was probably 14, 15. I don't even remember how old I was, but that really left an impression on me. And I didn't really have many friends myself. He was one friend that I could think of. There was probably a few others that I've forgotten there, but he's the one that I remember that I really liked at that church. I remember the pastor I didn't like, and most of what he preached was just about how bad having sex before marriage is. And, and he said something about if one of his daughters had sex before marriage, he would take her out. So basically implying he would murder his daughter if she had sex before marriage. So what do you think happened? All of his kids had sex before marriage, except for the one that was my friend. At least I don't think he did, but who knows, right? I don't know people's sex lives, but that's not the point. But the other ones I did find out they all did. But, it's just, so it was kind of messed up. And I wasn't very happy in that church. It was the church, a pastor thinks he's the big expert, preaches a bunch of stuff that wasn't even in the Bible. I was reading the Bible instead of listening to the pastor, which personally, if you are a kid and you're forced to go to church, I highly recommend reading the Bible and ignoring whatever the pastor's preaching about, because they say that the Bible is the word of God and you should read the Bible and it has all the answers for everything, which means you can read the Bible and you don't have to listen to the pastor. And that was my conclusion that I came to when I was a kid, So yeah, that's what happened. But then around the time when I joined the Navy, of course, people were kind of mean to me in that church. There were some mean people to me in that church. But then around the time I joined the Navy, when I was 20 years old, a lot of people were criticizing me. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, you're too weak. You're too stupid. You can't be in the Navy. You don't know what you're getting into. What are you thinking?" So people were telling me that, that I'm just too useless. I'm too weak and I'm too stupid, and I don't belong in the Navy. I listened to these people, and it kind of hurt. And I thought, well, maybe I don't belong in the Navy, but I'm already enlisted, and besides, I don't belong in this church either. So it was kind of sad. People were mean to me in that church. I really only had one friend, maybe two friends at the most of that church. I wasn't very happy. Church was just something that you did, and my mom told me when I was 18 years old that I was an adult and she wasn't going to make me go to church if I didn't want to. So what actually happened is I didn't stop going to church necessarily. What I did is I would go sometimes, occasionally, and I also attended a cardio kickboxing class by this one guy who did this cardio kickboxing class. So I'd go for there, but I wouldn't go for Sunday morning church. It's funny. He had his kickboxing class at the church building. So I went for that, but I didn't care about the church service. I got nothing out of it, But after the Navy, after I was discharged from the Navy, then, well, you have to understand, even while I was at the Nazarene church, I used to participate in Angel Food Ministries. We had this Angel Food Ministry, and it was sort of a thing where people can provide food to people who are poor. And so what we did is, we all helped out on, I think it was one Saturday of the month, and well, we used to get food through Angel Food Ministries at that church, Lakeland Community Church. And so I used to go there to get food. But then later on, I decided, hey, you know what? I'll volunteer. I'll be a volunteer to, put people's food in their boxes for them as they pass by. And so I became a volunteer at that church while I was attending the other church. But then, people got really nasty to me at the time that I joined the Navy, and so I didn't want anything to do with them anyway. So after I got discharged from the Navy, I started going to Lakeland Community Church. And so people knew me already there. So, it was cool. People were fairly nice, and I felt for a while like I had a sense of community. And I participated in a lot of things there, I volunteered in like Kids Zone, like the Children's Church Ministry. I volunteered at the coffee bar. I did all kinds of things. I even signed up for the marriage seminar. I was the only one who went to the marriage seminar and who didn't have a fiance. It's funny how that works, But so I was very active in that church. I did a lot of things. I remember a lot of people from those days, actually. And many of them were good people. I had far more positive experiences there, whereas I had basically no good experiences in the Nazarene church. And so I attended Lakeland Community Church for about 5 years, maybe 4 or 5 years. But then what ended up happening, I became more and more increasingly upset about the politics of the church and the financial decisions of the church. Like I would attend these meetings and I would find out that the church was wasting money on foolish things that I did not agree with. And I found that they were trying to find a denomination. They were breaking away from one denomination and joining another denomination. And I asked why. Well, why do we have to have a denomination for the church? Why do we have to be part of some group? And they told me that, well, we have to be part of a government accepted religion so we can remain our tax exempt status. And I'm like, oh, so this is about money and taxes and pleasing the government. It's not even about so much about whether or not you agree with the doctrines of that specific denomination of Christianity teaches. It's all about being tax exempt by having the government approve of your religion. I mean, whatever happened to separation of church and state? Like there was some weird shit going on at that church. and then it got creepy. Like they started becoming more ritualistic, more like Catholics, and like they had these Chinese guys' shoes and said it were sacred relics because it was some Chinese missionary or whatever that wore those shoes. So worn out, beat up old shoes that were no good for anybody to wear, but they were holy relics because they were Chinese guys' shoes. Like what? Like, so it got weirder and weirder. And I found that as their beliefs were changing and they didn't know what they believed, I started doing more research into the different denominations and what the difference was. I'm like, how can there be 33,000 denominations in the United States alone, yet they're all claiming to believe in the same God, the same Jesus, the same Bible? And like, I learned more about the Bible. I learned more about other types of Christians because I found there was a lot of different types of Christians. And I found you could ask 10 different Christians what a Bible verse means, and you get 10 different answers. So I started realizing the Christians, they didn't know what they believed. You think you know what Christianity is if you've only been in one church your whole life and you only hear the same thing. But that's it. I did believe in God and I did believe in the Bible because it was the only thing I had ever heard. I didn't know anything about Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Taoism. I didn't know about atheists, agnostics. I didn't know. I thought it was weird because the way it was presented to me, and at least how my autistic mind understood it, because autism and religion just don't mix very well. I'm proof of that. But, is that there were Christians. That's the way I was perceiving what I was told. There were Christians and they were the good people because they served God and they believed in Jesus and all this stuff and they were going to heaven. But then anybody who wasn't a Christian was the worldly, satanic people and they were going to burn in hell forever. And it started getting really, really strange because I started really questioning things. But what ended up happening is I had heard about a youth group at a different church, Life Christian Center. And I went there one time on a Wednesday night. And I think at that church, I had a lot of positive experiences, at least for a while, because, I ended up leaving Lakeland and I started going to Life Christian Center because it was, at least at the time that I started attending Life Christian Center, it was the friendliest place. And I went to the youth group. So I was around, teenagers, young adults. I was around some young people. And because they were people closer to my age, they knew stuff. They knew popular music. They knew video games and cartoons. We even, in youth group, we even once watched a Dragon Ball Z movie. I kid you not. Another time I watched Despicable Me. They had, once in a while, they had special movie nights and stuff. So it was friendly. But however, even though I was attending Life Christian Center and I participated in a lot of things, I started having more and more doubts at that time about the truth of Christianity. And there were several things that led to this. I would say there were three main, I guess you could say there were three main things, three strikes, you could say, that completely wiped out any belief that I had in the teachings of Christianity. Of course, then there's also the fact that I didn't know what Christianity was. It's like, I was like, okay, God exists. So what? Yeah, Jesus died and rose again. How does that help anybody? I don't see how that helps anybody. I just don't get it. It was explained to me by many people, yet nothing ever made sense. I read the Bible. I watched Christian movies. I read other Christian books trying to explain Christianity, and nothing ever made any sense to me. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make logical sense. Like computer programming languages make a lot more sense than Christianity. But there were actually three moral or ethical issues that led to the complete destruction of me being a Christian. At least, my mom may say I never was a Christian. I think I was, but if I wasn't a Christian, then what was I? I still don't know. But more on that later. So the first one was, when people were debating the gay marriage issue. Like, because gay marriage was sort of like a political thing that people were arguing over. And I started using the internet. I started reading what people said about gay marriage, and I started seeing that Christians were like, using a few verses in the Bible that, homosexuals are an abomination and all that stuff. And there's stuff in the Bible in the Old Testament about if a man lays with a man, then he's supposed to, be put to death. And there's some weird stuff in the Bible. So I started getting the message early on that Christianity, in general, because it was based on the Bible, was very anti-gay. The Bible was anti-gay and Christianity was anti-gay. So that was one of the things that was very strange. And also another thing I never understood is you might think that you might hate gay people, or you might be against gay marriage, or you might think God hates gay people, but why do you care? Why do you care about politically opposing gay people from being able to get legally married if that's what they want? Like, who cares? I never understood that. I understand more of it now, why gay people wanted to get married, for tax benefits and sometimes just to have their relationships be seen as validly as heterosexual couples. I think they just wanted that validation and realized that to recognize that if you have a partner of the same sex, that doesn't mean that they mean less to you than someone of the opposite sex does to a heterosexual person. So I get it now. I didn't get it back then when I was 20, 21, that sort of thing, but I understand it now a little bit better. And so then that's when I learned about gay people. That's when I learned about LGBT things, and I learned about transgender people, and I went on a quest, and I was trying to figure out, well, what is my sexual orientation? What is my gender identity? But even before that, I had strange indications that something wasn't right. Like this one dream I had when I was a teenager where I was having sex with a man, but I was the woman. That was a pretty scary nightmare. That was a pretty scary nightmare, and I don't know where that came from. I also had a recurring dream that I was a pregnant woman. So figure that one out. Who knows what that means? But yeah, I was having dreams like that even in the past. So I had some sort of sexual deviancy even back then, yet I don't know what it was. I still don't fully understand everything about that. But anyway, that's not the point. The point is I became aware of those issues, and I saw that LGBT people, gay and transgender people, were particularly at odds with Christianity. And people were asking questions like, do gays go to hell? Does God love gay people? Does God still love transgender people, or does he hate them? It's weird. Can you be transgender and a Christian? Can you be gay and a Christian? People ask these questions because honestly, sometimes it's not clear, So, LGBT issues kind of messed me up in my views of Christianity a little bit. But that was only the beginning. Oh, it got so much worse than that. Then it was the abortion issue, because when I started getting political ads in the mail and, they were criticizing Todd Akin, that was when I first started realizing what was happening with abortion. Like, here's one thing I do want the whole world to understand, because this is very important, is my mom didn't tell me to be pro-life about abortion. Now, my mom used to be in pro-life protests years ago, but I never saw that. That was long before I existed. My mom and I don't think we even talked about abortion until I was in my 20s. And after I started reading about abortion and I found about it, and it hadn't been talked about in churches, I don't remember, but when we have a comment actually from Sovereign K. Lazarus. The Bible talks about eunuchs, doesn't talk about their sexuality though, but it does say to leave them alone. That is quite right, Sovereign. In fact, that Bible verse where Jesus mentions eunuchs in the book of Matthew is actually in my book, Honesty, and I actually talk about the verse mentioning eunuchs. In the Bible. Yeah, it's actually mentioned in my book because it meant so much to me. And personally, I often still wonder, even to this day, if Jesus was talking about people like me. when he was talking about some that were born eunuchs, some that were made eunuchs by men, and then some were became eunuchs for the sake of the kingdom of heaven, and all this stuff. And I can't help but wonder if somehow it was referring to people like me who have vowed celibacy. And so, that just kind of fits into it, And so, see, today I go by the name Chastity White Rose. See, this is my fabulous shirt, Chastity White Rose, the Vegan Virgin. Yeah, and see, as a person who's vowed celibacy and who's asexual, I feel like I was already like mentally or spiritually a eunuch. Like I already was. But now I am physically, because I had my testicles removed. So I am physically and mentally a eunuch. I really am, and that's where I'm at right now. And I guess that's good enough for me. But then part of how I started realizing that I was asexual is that here's a pretty good indication that someone's asexual. Here's how I started figuring it out, okay? Because it was the abortion topic. I thought, wait, abortion's happening? Why is abortion happening? So people, they get pregnant, but then they kill the baby before it's born. And it's like, wait a minute, and I had heard somewhere that people get pregnant because they're having sex, straight sex. And then I thought, wait, if people don't want to have babies, then why are they having sex? Like, seriously. I thought, well, if people don't want children, then they would just, not have sex, and then abortion wouldn't happen because the unwanted pregnancies would not be a thing. That's what I thought. And I kid you not, like only an asexual person would think of something like that. Because I was thinking, wait, why do people have sex who don't want children? Because in my mind, sex was something you did maybe once or twice or 3 times, maybe, depending on how many children you had. Or maybe if you weren't successful in conceiving children, you had to do it more times than that. But for me, I had heard that sex was a thing, but I thought it was that people specifically had sex for the purpose of creating children. That's what I thought, and so that's how I started realizing, after I talked to other people and I found out something. I found out that other people don't want children, but they like having sex. I'm not one of those people, and I'm still a virgin. That's why I call myself the Vegan Virgin on my shirt, So yeah. I figured out that I was asexual because I wasn't interested in sex. I wasn't sexually attracted to people, because if I had been a sexual person, I probably would not be a virgin. I probably would have had sex with somebody at some point, but I wasn't interested. So, but the abortion issue made a real big impact on me personally, because when I found out about abortion happening, and then I found out that Christians were even in disagreement with each other over whether God is pro-life or pro-choice, or whether God likes abortion or whether he hates abortion. Like, Christians can't all agree on the abortion issue. And then, people, they could quote Bible verses back at each other, I suppose, but abortion isn't really a specific topic mentioned in the Bible very much. But I thought that "thou shalt not kill" covered the abortion topic pretty well. I would, in my mind, I was still a Christian back then. I didn't know what kind of Christian I was, but I thought, well, God probably doesn't like abortion. That's what I thought, because I thought God probably didn't like murder. But at the same time, that didn't make sense, because there were the other parts of the Bible where God ordered the killing of certain Canaanites tribes and ordered the killing of animals and ritual sacrifices. And then, after the abortion issue, the animal issue became increasingly important to me, you see, because I was bothered, even as a young child. Like, I was bothered by the flood story. I was bothered, like, wait, all those animals, they had to drown and die in that flood in Genesis 6? Why? What did they do to deserve that? And then, realizing, well, that, animal sacrifice is part of the Jewish religion, part of the commandments in, especially in Leviticus. Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy had a lot of animal sacrifice, and it continued to happen throughout the Old Testament. And then I was bothered by animal sacrifice, but I didn't know why, because back then I was like, wait, I thought we're not supposed to kill, but God's telling people to kill animals. What? So then people like, oh, well, thou shalt not kill only applies to humans. And I'm like, really? But I just had this sense that killing animals was wrong, the same way that killing humans was wrong. And I went vegetarian. When I realized this, I went vegetarian, and I stopped eating meat because I knew back then that, well, wait, the animals are killed because people sell the meat, because people think they have to eat meat. So I went vegetarian after I figured this out. I found out, oh, I can live without meat, no problem. But I still consumed a lot of cheese and occasionally eggs back then. And I didn't know about the dairy and egg and honey industries and stuff like that. So I later, about maybe half a year after I went vegetarian, because I was realizing it's not right to kill animals, then I ended up reading a book, Why We Should Go Vegan by Magnus Finding. Explained everything. He explained that veganism is better ethical, not killing animals. It's better for our health, and it's better at reducing climate change. So he laid out a simple book and explained veganism, and I went vegan after reading his book. And then later on, I watched some of the vegan documentaries, and I was watching those documentaries because even though I was already convinced to go vegan, but then I watched those documentaries because I wanted to recommend them to people. Like, I have to watch it before I can really say, I recommend you see this. So I watched Earthlings, and I watched several others, Forks Over Knives, Vegucated, Speciesism, the movie. I watched many vegan documentaries. I still haven't watched them all. But what happened when I watched Earthling and I saw how bad it was, I found out that, animals they weren't just killed. They were killed in the most painful of ways, because the humans were acting like the animals. It doesn't matter whether they feel pain. It doesn't matter if they're screaming and crying out in pain or trying to get away when people are trying to kill them, because those humans are psychopaths. And then I realized that anybody who sees this, what animals are going through, and still continues to eat animal products, knowing that their choice is paying the people who murder these animals, especially in these horrible ways. Anybody who knows the information and is not vegan is a psychopath. They have no love. So first, the gay and transgender rights issue, then the abortion issue, and then, the vegan issue. And I became a vegan, and I realized something. I realized, especially when I became a vegan, I could no longer be a Christian. I can't be a Christian because here we have in the Bible, God saying to kill animals, but I say that killing animals is wrong. I see it in the eyes of the animals, the fear. They don't want to die. They don't want to be in pain. And so what source am I going to believe? Am I going to follow the authority of the Bible as a guide for life? Am I going to follow what people say in churches I was at? Or am I going to follow what I know in my heart? Am I going to follow what I've seen with my own eyes, what these animals are going through? So which is it? Am I going to be a Christian, or am I going to be a vegan? I chose vegan. I chose someone who swore nonviolence, to be pro-life for the unborn and the other animals. and I don't want to kill anyone. And when I realized that I didn't want to kill anyone, and I swore ahimsa. Ahimsa is a word that means nonviolence. It comes from those Hindu religions, it's that kind of thing. And I swore nonviolence. I didn't want to kill anyone. But then I made a connection after that. And I vowed celibacy for life. I vowed celibacy for life because it occurred to me, well, if I had sex and then caused a new child to be created, I'm against abortion. So of course I wouldn't want that child aborted. But if that child is also not aborted, they have a chance to grow up and be a carnist that continues to hurt animals throughout their life. And they could be consuming meat and cheese and eggs and all kinds of things and buying, leather and fur and continuing to feed into the animal killing industry. So I realized that me being vegan would have been useless if I also then went to have sex with some woman and then, got her pregnant, because that child could basically undo all the benefits that I was doing by my life of nonviolence. So I realized that a nonviolent life, a vegan life, is a celibate life. That's what I realized. Unless you're gay, because if you're gay, there's no procreation. So here's what. Okay, so what do you think happened? Is like I started liking gay people. I didn't know really about asexual people back then, but it's like, you know what? I wish that everybody was gay. Like I used to still believe in God. So when I'm like, God, can you just make everybody gay? But like, wait, so God doesn't like gay people according to the Bible, according to Christians. And I'm like, well, I love gay people. Like seriously, I like gay people because no matter what they do with someone of the same sex, they're not going to create new babies. So they won't cause abortions, but they also won't cause babies to be born and grow up and then can hurt animals. So gay people are awesome. And then later on, I found out about asexual people. There are asexual people who aren't really interested in sex. And just before anyone ever says this to me, before anybody leaves a comment saying that asexual people are not all celibate and that some asexuals have sex, yes, some of them do, because somebody could lack sexual attraction. They might have a low desire for sex or have low sexual attraction, but they might have sex with somebody who talks them into it, and they find out they like it, so they keep doing it, So they might like it, but someone having sex doesn't make them asexual. But I will say this, asexual people are just generally less likely to have sex. They're less likely to have sex, and they're less likely to reproduce. And if an asexual does have sex with someone, it probably is somebody who's important to them, because asexual people or demisexual people, for example, who only have sex with people who they have a strong emotional bond with. So the truth of the matter is, I came to believe, and I still believe this, that if the world had all gay people or all asexual people or all even demisexual people, that would be a better world than a world where the majority of people are straight, because heterosexuality has led to humans just populating like nonstop, and people having so many kids, and then they keep getting pregnant even when they don't want to have kids. So then they start aborting them. So I started realizing that a celibate life is a nonviolent life. So I vowed celibacy. And then when I came to terms with my transgender identity, and I started realizing, well, I really do feel like I should have been a girl. Like, I think I was in the wrong body, and I still feel more female, even though I have a male body, and I started realizing that. So I was searching for a name, a new name. And it was actually a suggestion of a friend who suggested the name Chastity, because I was a virgin. And then I realized something. I was vowing celibacy. And chastity is basically a synonym for celibacy. So that's how I got the name Chastity. And then the white rose is a flower that represents virginity and purity and all those good things. So Chastity White Rose became my transgender name because it's very girly, but it also represents my vow of celibacy. So that's how I went from being Chandler Isaac Klebs to Chastity White Rose. And I still answered it either name because I know who I am and people know who I am. I make it very clear in my book, for example. So I do hope, we have some comments here. We do have some really good comments. I can't put them all here, but Sovereign K. Lazarus, I'm demisexual AF. Well, that's very nice, Sovereign. That's a good way to be. Yeah. So yeah, and I really do hope that this video clarifies a little bit about why I left people's churches who knew me in those churches. I hope this clarifies a bit to people who wonder, well, why were you a Christian before? Why did you call yourself a Christian before and now you don't? So, I mean, that's the purpose of this video, is for people to understand that I've been on a journey. And ever since the age of 25, when I stopped going to Life Christian Center because I started having some belief problems and also problems with things people were doing in the church there as well, I stopped going to church, but I was still a Christian for a while. I still believed in God for a while, but more and more it became unclear who is God? What is God? What does God want? And I wasn't finding the answers. The Bible was contradictory and didn't give me the answers. And if I asked Christians, they would all disagree with each other. So that didn't give me the answers. And I wasn't receiving an answer from God, even though I continually prayed down at the creek, the wooded area with the flowing water near where I used to live. And I used to pray all the time. I used to read the Bible. And even after I stopped going to church, I was still reading the Bible, still reading Christian books, and I was trying to believe in something. I was really trying to believe in something, but I didn't know what. So then I started searching other religions. I started looking into Buddhism and Hinduism and even Islam. I read part of the Quran, found that was pretty messed up too, And so I explored religions, but finally, I didn't believe any of these religions. And I came to this conclusion that, whatever happens to me after I die, I'll find out when I die. You know what I mean? That's my attitude. But, I was taught with Christianity, like, oh, well, you have to believe in Jesus before you die, and you have to pray a salvation prayer. And I did pray the salvation prayer many times over. But I got to the point where I couldn't say it anymore because I no longer believed it. I no longer believed that Jesus died on the cross or raised from the dead, but it was more than that. I didn't even know, why does that matter? Why would there be a hell? Why would God send people to hell? And people like, oh, well, Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice so that God could forgive people. Because if Jesus didn't die, then everyone goes to hell. I'm like, dude, if you're talking about God that's like the boss dude, the creator of the universe, then if God wants to forgive people and not send them to hell, then he can do that. He's God, right? So God, look, there was no reason for Jesus to die on the cross. There's no reason for it. So the simple fact of the matter is, whatever happens to us after we die, if there is a God, God will decide that. And here's what I learned is that if I were to lie and I was to continue going on in my life, what if I just kept going to church? What if I called myself a Christian for the rest of my life and tried to hide everything, tried to hide the parts of me that are not compatible with Christianity? That's not gonna earn me brownie points with God, because God would know I was lying anyway, because God knows everything, right? Omniscience and all that. And God can do anything. So supposedly they teach the omnipotence, it's weird. And some people believe in that stuff. Some people don't, that's a whole nother story. But I just thought, well, you know what? God will do with me what God will do with me, whether I'm alive or dead. And that was the conclusion that I came to. So what it comes to, oh, thanks. Yeah, we have a comment. Nice hair, dude. Thanks. I like my hair. It's nice and pretty. I like it. It's kind of messy and uneven, but hey, I have hair. I'm glad I have hair on my head, you know? But yeah, anyway, yeah. So, that's the thing, is that I believed in God, but I thought, well, you know what? God's not giving me an answer on what I should believe or how I should live my life, but I have a pretty good idea of the way I want to live my life. So I went on and I've lived my life the way that I think is the right way to live my life. And some people look down on me. Some people think less of me just because I no longer go to church, or just because I no longer call myself a Christian, even though very little about me has changed. There are a few things that have changed. Like, obviously, I don't call myself a Christian anymore, and I'm better looking than I used to be back when they saw me in church. So a few things have changed since then, but I'm still pretty much the same person. The difference is that now I have a little bit more of a focus on what's important to me. And so I'm very much about respecting life, and respecting life of the animals, the unborn, as well as the born. And so I'm very anti-murder. I'm also very anti-sexual, because, like I explained, sex causes a lot of problems. Well, I'm only against straight sex. That's the only sex I'm actually against, because of the procreation risk. But that's a whole other story. And the point of this isn't to get into the details of all that, but I want people to understand. And because I did a podcast recently, and this one guy named Rick, who was one of our people on that video, you can even see that video. I could show you that video where I was talking to Edward and Rick and Stan and Monique. I was talking to some people, and Rick asked me, why did you turn your back on God? Turn my back on God? I never did that. Instead, I stopped believing things over time because I didn't know what to believe. I went from being a believer in at least some form of Christianity to not believing because I no longer had a good enough reason to believe things. Before, I believed it only because it's what I was told. So I don't know. What am I? Am I a Christian? Probably not, because I don't believe that stuff that I'm supposed to believe to be a Christian. Am I agnostic? Well, I guess, because I don't know. Am I an atheist? Well, yeah, because I don't believe in any particular God of any organized religion. I don't know. Maybe in some way, shape, or form, I could be all of these things. Maybe I could be a Christian because I follow the golden rule, which Jesus taught. It's in other religions too. So can you be a Christian, an atheist, an agnostic, and maybe a Buddhist and a Hindu and a Muslim all at the same time? What can you do? What are the rules? I mean, seriously, what are the rules? Who says what you can and can't do? Like, there was this one YouTuber I followed, Zinnia Jones. Like, what started out being this guy, and he's like, you know what, I'm gay, and then thought, well, I'm not really gay. This is Zinnia Jones I'm talking about. Zinnia Jones, like, well, I'm gay, but then he's like, oh, well, no, it's not so much I'm gay. I'm really more gender. I want to be a woman. And then Zinnia Jones fell in love with some woman and decided that she was a lesbian. So you can be a guy who's gay, and then you can identify as female, and then you can accidentally fall in love with another female, and you can be a trans lesbian. Like, you can do that. I'm like, cool. Who comes up with the rules of what you can or cannot do? Because as far as I see, God is not, if God exists, whatever God there is, because there's other gods besides the Christian God. There's gods of other religions. But God is not giving me any indication of what way it wants me to live or anybody else to live. So I'm going by what I feel is right and based on the evidence of things that I do have. So I don't know. And I feel that and also God is also not stopping anybody from living their life the way they want to do things. So God's not stopping anyone from aborting the babies, even though at times I kind of wished he would, that when I believe in God, God's not stopping people from being gay or transgender. God's not stopping people from voting for a particular candidate in elections. God is not giving advice or stopping people from doing things that he doesn't approve of. So what's the big deal? Like, I have no reason to believe this stuff, and I'll find out someday if there's a God or if there's an afterlife after I die. I'll find out someday, you know? Sovereign Lazarus has another comment for us. I believe there could be some sort of God, but definitely not this all-loving God that people talk about. Yeah, I have to agree there, Sovereign. I mean, like, just the way it looks to me is that if there is a God, that God might be very, very confused. And, you know, there are some important things that could really be mentioned. Like, for example, different religions have a different view of God. Different people have a different view of God. For example, there's pantheism. Pantheism that equates God with the universe. You know, well, God is the universe. God is not necessarily a big dude up in the sky who's pissed off at homosexuals, you know, but God is just the natural universe. You know, God is, you know, outer space and the law of gravity and all that stuff. You know what I mean? So God's the universe. So under pantheism, then of course God exists, because if God is the universe, then the universe is what exists, then of course God exists. If you define God that way. If you define God as you know, like the Christian God of the Bible, well, I don't believe in that. But you know, so I mean, I think, okay, everybody believes in something. We all believe in something. Some of us we could call that something we believe God. We could call it a higher power. We all believe different things. We all have a guiding principle that we go on in our life. You know what I mean? And personally, more over the past few years, I feel like I'm certainly not a Christian. I'm still not a Christian by anybody's definition, but I don't really think I'm an atheist either. Because I just feel that the way I see things and the way that I live my life is different than other atheists. Because now atheists are free to believe whatever they want, really. That's the nice thing. But I find that I just don't get along well with most atheists, because there are people who say that, oh, you can't be pro-life and an atheist. I know pro-life atheists. There are people who say if you're an atheist, you can't be Republican. It's like, okay, first of all, who made atheism a religion? Who made atheism a set of rules that you have to follow? I had enough of that. I don't like that in Christianity, and I'm not going to let atheists tell me how I have to live my life. So I'm not loyal to a specific label. I'm not loyal to the label of Christianity. I'm not even loyal to the label of atheism. If a new label describes me better in the future than any label I've used before, then I'll use it. In fact, if you want a label, I'll give you one. I am a unicorn universalist, because I believe in unicorns. I do. Yep, I believe in unicorns. I believe that unicorns represent peace and goodness and purity, and I believe that horses are made in the image of the unicorn. And so yeah, so the Christians had it wrong. It's the horses that are made in the image of God, not humans. So basically, let's just say God can be a unicorn. Okay, God can be a unicorn. And you know, unicorn universalist. I like that because I believe in unicorns, but I also believe in the universe. I believe that we are all in existence here. We see each other, we hear each other, and we have different beliefs, and we're all experiencing, we have a shared reality, but we're also experiencing a different reality, each of us, because we have each our own perspective. And so here's what I believe is I believe that truth matters. And I believe that people should be free to seek truth. People should not be told that they have to believe a certain religion, and they should also not be told that they are not allowed to believe a specific religion. And here's the thing. If freedom of speech and freedom of information and freedom of expression and freedom of learning is available, then maybe someday we would all come to the same conclusions. But you know what? I'm not even so sure that's right. Because maybe we're not all supposed to look the same and talk the same and act the same and go to the same church or whatever, Maybe we're not all supposed to be the same. Maybe, just maybe, if there is a God, that God wants us to be different, wants us to all be different, and wants us all to be beautiful in our own way. Because sometimes the world looks that way. So what I'm saying is that, good comment, Sovereign. Unless said religion preaches hurting or killing. That's what I say. Completely agreed, because I've already decided that I'm not going to be hurting or killing anyone if I can help it. I've sworn nonviolence, and so that vow of ahimsa, the vow of chastity, the vow of truth, there are certain promises I've made to myself to be honest, to be nonviolent, to be celibate. I've made these promises to myself, and these promises I've made to myself surpass what anybody else tries to tell me. So here's what it comes down to. If there's a God, if God shows up and says, you know what, Chastity, I want you to start killing animals. I want you to start using and killing animals, and I want you to go have sex with people. What if God tells me to do that? What if God told me to do that? Would I do it? No. So it doesn't matter whether or not a God exists and who later tells me those things, because I'm not going to do it. So So look, I believe that people should be free to explore what they believe, but I also think that too much importance has been placed on whether or not there's a God, because the issue is not does God exist, but the issue is, how is God defined? What is God? What does God want? And more importantly, if God does tell you something, to tell you to do something, are you going to do it? And for me, the answer is no. So quite right. I'd be fighting God. Yeah, that's a good comment, Lazarus. Lazarus was the guy in the Bible who Jesus raised from the dead. So that's interesting. But that's the thing. So it's true. By being a nonviolent person, I would be fighting God if God told me to be violent. What if you know what I'm saying? Are you get what I'm saying? So here's what it is. I guess what you could say is that for me, God is truth. God is being honest, not in the words, just in the words you say, but being honest with yourself, honest about who you are, and really just maybe God is the unicorn who spoke to me, and its name is Honesty the Unicorn. Just maybe. I don't have all the answers, and none of us do, but I got to tell you, a unicorn spoke to me in my dreams and explained things to me in a way I could understand. Well, most of it. The rest is beyond me. So I really do hope that anybody who knew me in the various churches I've been in, who watches this, will have a clear understanding about why I no longer attend your church, why I no longer call myself a Christian, and my beliefs have changed. Yes, my beliefs have changed. A lot has happened since you knew me back then. Many years have passed. Some of you knew me when I was 12. Some of you knew me when I was 20. Some of you knew me when I was 25. But this coming May, I turned 34. I'm old. Time has passed, and who I am has changed, and my beliefs have changed. The way I live has changed. And will it change again? Probably. The only thing that doesn't change is change itself. You've probably heard that. So, I don't know what the future holds, and sometimes I'm scared. Sometimes I worry about the future. But I got to tell you, at the same time, I'm excited because we can either change for the worse or we can change for the better. And I do believe that over time I have changed for the better. And you know what? I hope you do too. So that is a positive note that I would like to end this on. And so thank you to anybody who listens to my rant about the change in my religious beliefs. And also thank you to the people who left comments, particularly Sovereign K Lazarus. Yeah. Yep. Ahimsa. Yep. Nonviolence. Thanks for the comments, Sovereign. Very, very good feedback. So I guess I'll end this now, and then I'm going to send it to some people who knew me in those churches so they have a better understanding. What each of you, when you listen to this, do with the information, well, that's your call. Do what you want. Goodbye, everybody. Oh, also, be excellent to each other. And party on, dudes!